Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Whenever you're watching this, I thought I'd do a series of these as well. So these are past papers. Now, I can only offer you the best advice, and that is to go and do this yourself. So go through past papers. It's very easy. Just Google AQA past papers geography, and you'll find loads of links that have all of them from 2018, 19, 20, 2021, 2022, 2023. I don't think you have access to last year's just yet. But, you've got 5 or 6 exams for paper 1, paper 2, and paper 3 all at your fingertips. And the best way to prepare is to go through and see how the exams looked, because yours won't look much different. Yes, the questions might be a little bit different, but if you can get an idea and prepare yourself for the kinds of questions they're going to ask, how the paper looked, on the day will be less of a surprise to you. So let's go through this. I'm literally going to wing it. I haven't looked at this paper for a few years now, so I can't remember the questions that are going to come up. But that's the whole point. Neither will you when the exam is. So your front of the exam will look like this. My first and most important and often understated rule here is that you need to read the front of the paper. Now, in the exam, you sit there for a minute. Everyone gets their pens, test their pens. You put your name on the front, centre number, candidate number, all that jazz. But what people don't always do is read the front. And there's a case to be made that actually you need to make sure you're reading the front to understand what certain things are and make sure you're answering the right questions. Look, answer all questions in section A and B. Answer 2 questions in section C, so you know what you need to be doing there. So if you that's given to you for free. It tells you what a HIC is, LIC is, NE is, and the spelling, punctuation, and grammar marks will be assessed in question 1.2, so you know it's SPAG. This is given to you. You haven't got to guess or remember it. It's given to you there. So let's go through. The first one's multiple choice. Question 1.1. State which of the following statements about tropical storms is true. Now, for this one, I do 2 things. One, you take 1 minute maximum. It's a 1 minute, 1 mark question, so 1 minute, 1 minute maximum. You haven't got to spend any more time on it than that. If you're unsure, you remove the ones you know it cannot possibly be. Because if you're having a total guess at these 4, A, B, C, D, just circle B because it's the quickest one, then actually, okay, that might be a lucky guess, but it's 1 in 4. If you rule out the ones you know it can't be, then it leaves you with a bit more room. You might have to guess between 1 of 2, then you're more likely to get it right. Tropical storms gain energy as they reach land. We know that's not true. They lose energy, so it's definitely not A. What about D? Tropical storms form above oceans where temperatures are 27 degrees C. Okay, that could be true. Tropical storms occur in areas of high pressure. We know that's not true. That's it's low pressure, isn't it? So if you say, for example, that was your line of thinking, you got B and D, you'd have a guess. And then you go for one of them and you're more than likely going to get it right, 50-50, rather than guessing between 1 and 4. Okay? It does say circle 1 only. Which of the following statements about tropical storms is true? So for me, I think this one, in terms of the question, is a fairly easy one. It is, of course, D, because they're near the equator, but not quite on it. It's more to do with 5 to 15 degrees north and south of the equator as the air moves away from it. So I'd circle D there, or more specifically, I'd put a little shade 1 circle. So I'd shade one of these little circles down there. Next one's a graph question. Study figure 1, a graph showing the number of tropical storms, that's typhoons, that reached Japan in each month from 1851 to 2018. Now, I know you'll be in a rush, but look what I'm doing. I'm reading every question carefully, because if you don't do that, you'll make a mistake. Trust me. 1.2, the total number of typhoons reaching Japan has it was 204. What percentage of the total number of typhoons occurred in August? Give your answer to the nearest whole percentage. You won't get 2 marks if you don't give it to the nearest whole percentage. So, again, read the question. This one, pencil, ruler, calculator. Very simple, okay? Each of those little dots in the graph, so each of those is clearly 2. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 as you work your way up. So, therefore, half of it is 1. So, in April, there was 1. In May, there was 1. That's 2. In June, there was 11. So that's 1 plus 1 plus 11. That's 13. 13 plus 32 is 45. That's July, 45. 45 plus 69 is 114. That's August, 114. Plus 67, 114, 67. Plus October, November. Yeah, it's 204. Okay? You haven't got to work that out. It tells you it, though. The question is, what percentage of the total number of typhoons occurred in August? So in August, there was, as we've established, 69. So it's 69 out of 204. Okay? And what do you do for that one? Well, you go on your calculator. 69 divided by 204. And this is 0.338. Now, you have to show your working, so you'd write that down. That's how you work out a percentage, a skill that, I take that you know. 0.338. If you write that in here, you will not get the marks, because that's not right. So if you make it a percentage, it's not 0.338, it's times by 100, isn't it? So it's 33.8. If you write down in that box there, 33.8, that is the right answer, but you only get 1 mark. It's the nearest whole percentage. 33.8 becomes 34%. 1.3. Give one reason why tropical storms have a seasonal pattern. I mean, this isn't a lovely question, I'm not going to lie to you, but why do they have a seasonal pattern? All you got to do is give one reason. You haven't got to explain it. It's only 1 mark. So that, for example, you might want to say in terms of with the fact that the oceans are warmer at different times of the year. So you might want to say tropical storms happen when temperatures are warmer, i.e. summer. That's what the seasons are: winter, summer, spring, and autumn. So in the summer, when ocean temperatures are warmer, because evaporation is faster or more common. Again, 1 mark, very simple. 2 marks. Describe the structure of Cyclone Idai. For this one, I would point out 2 things. I would describe, you're telling me what it looks like. Mr. Murphy's incredibly tall, incredibly handsome, good hair, for example. You haven't got to say why the things are the way they are, just what they're like. Describe the structure. So the structure, what does it look like? I would say for this one, you could say that there is an eye just off the coastline, an eye just off the coastline near Beira. And you could also say that it has swirling, spinning winds towards the outside. You could also mention, bear in mind you've got the scale down here, that the eye is roughly around about 100 kilometers long, and the entire tropical storm, if you will, is kind of wider than 500 kilometers wide. Again, that's nothing you haven't got to remember. That's just, it gives you the name of the place, name Mozambique. It gives you the scale. Any 2 of those, 1 mark each. 6 marker. Suggest why some tropical storms have severe primary and secondary effects. Use figure 3 and your understanding. 4 things to do here. Primary effects, secondary effects, use the figure, and your understanding. Why tropical storms have severe primary effects. So you would use some primary effects from up here, and you would use some secondary effects from your own understanding, or vice versa. So for this one, I would always start off my 6 marker with in figure 3, because then you can't not mention it. So in figure 3, let's choose any primary effect I can see. In figure 3, the storm had 200 kilometers an hour winds, and it caused, what can we use? Wind speeds, 150 millimeters of rain in 24 hours. That's 1 mark, really. Why? Why is that severe? Why did it have them? Well, ultimately, this is severe because it can damage infrastructure, it can damage people's homes, livelihoods, jobs. In fact, the total damage was 2.2 billion. Again, it gives you that, okay? So you can use the figures to your heart's content. However, if you just use the figure, you won't get more than 2 marks. You have to use your own understanding. That's where your own case study comes from. So, in figure 3, this is bad because, Also, in another example that I've studied, and this is where your case study revision comes in, some secondary effects were Some secondary effects were in Hurricane Katrina, for example. And then you would say, why that's severe? Why is it bad? What did it mean for the area? 6 marks, 3 marks. I'd break that down into 2 3 markers, basically. This one here, don't get confused because the question's on the next page. Study figure 4, a map showing the distributions, the spread of earthquakes in and around Japan. Which of these is true? Let's go through the same thought process as before in terms of the first question. Shade 1 circle only, which is true. Most of the stronger earthquakes happened on land. Well, that's clearly not the case. It's definitely not A. Most earthquakes happen in the east and southeast of Japan. So that's down here. I'd say there's more up here, isn't there? So that's not true either. C. Most earthquakes around Japan were 7 on the Richter scale. Were over 7. So are most of them big dots bigger than that one there? I'd say no, there's lots of little dots, isn't there? Lots of kind of 3s and 4s. So that means hopefully D is true. No earthquakes were greater than 5 on the Richter scale happened to the west of Japan. So 5 is over here, number 6. And nope, the west one happened here. So in that case, which one is the most true? Because I don't like any of them, as I've said. So which is the most true? Well, it's definitely not A. It's definitely not D. And I would say the other two are more subjective. So I'm going to say actually the one that's probably most true. Most earthquakes happen to the east and southeast. Well, it's not the southeast, but it certainly is over this side, isn't it? So it is B for that one. And by the way, that might happen. You might not like the question, but you got to get on with it. Using figure 4, name the type of plate margin between the Pacific and Eurasian plates. How do you know that? How do you remember that? Oh, using figure 4. Let's have a look. Pacific, Eurasian. Pacific, Eurasian, they're coming together. They are meeting. Therefore, what do we think it is? Well, they're coming together head first. They're not sliding past each other. They're not moving away from each other. So that is a destructive plate margin. And suggest one other tectonic hazard likely to occur near the plate margin shown in figure 4. Piece of cake. This is the ocean. What have you learned about in Japan? A tsunami. Straight down the answer. Tsunami. Wonderful. Explain how the risks of a tectonic hazard can be reduced. 4 marks. I would say you get 1 mark for naming a way you can reduce them and a 1 mark for explaining that. So therefore you need 2 reasons, 2 ways how the risks of tectonic hazards can be reduced. So whether that's with planning, preparation, monitoring or prediction, you mention 1 method and how it reduces the risks. For example, one way to reduce the risk is using radio warning systems. This means the risks can be reduced because people can evacuate. Easy, that's 2 marks. Then let's do another one. Another way the risks of a tectonic hazard can be reduced is earthquake-proof buildings. For example, steel lanterns and reinforced windows can reduce the risks because buildings are safer. Done. 4 marks. Easy. State 1 source of evidence for long-term climate change during the Quaternary period. Or not a nice question, this one. But 1 source of evidence for long-term climate change. Well, I would say evidence, so not cause of climate change. Make sure you're reading the question properly. What is a source of evidence? Well, you could have ice cores. That's probably the best one, where you have evidence of gas bubbles and CO2 levels in the ice, but you haven't got to mention that. Ice cores is enough for 1 mark. Let's go for that one. Again, another map question, another figure question. There's lots of these in there. Using figure 5, which of the following statements is true? Shade 1 circle only. Greatest increase along the equator doesn't look like that to me because the greatest increase clearly looks like it's in the North Pole. Most of Africa will rise between 0 and 0.5, so yellow. Africa's all orange, so new. The oceans will show a greater increase in temperature than the land areas. No, the land looks like it's getting warmer, so please D. Areas north of 60 degrees will have a greater increase in temperature. So everywhere above 60. Everywhere above there, I would say actually that's true. Yeah, so D. For that one, carbon capture image. This is your 9 marker then. Managing climate change involves both reducing causes, mitigation, and responding to them, adaptation. Do you agree? Now, I've gone through 9 markers like this, loads and loads and loads and loads. The question is those 3 words there in the middle. Do you agree? So you need to do 3 paragraphs, 2 saying yes and 1 saying no, or 2 saying no and 1 saying yes. Both points of view. You're getting spag marks, so take advantage of those 3 marks, because imagine if you miss out on a good grade or a grade like a pass because you spelled a few words wrong. Using figure 6 and your understanding, it even gives you a figure. It would do in the exam. It can't do on here, but it would give you that in the exam. It would never say this in the exam. Carbon capture. Well, there's your first paragraph. You have to use the figure. So why not do it in the first thing? Do your intro. I agree with the statement. I don't agree with the statement that this is happening. One piece of evidence is, in terms of carbon capture, is that mitigation or adaptation? That's certainly mitigation, isn't it? Trying to reduce it. So you would say mitigation. You could use carbon capture as your first example. I would say your first paragraph, you mentioned about mitigation. Your second one, you mentioned about adaptation. And the third one can be actually maybe the counter-argument saying that, well, if you don't adapt, if you don't mitigate enough, then you're going to have to adapt. So maybe mention 2 on one side, 1 on the other. You get marks for your opinion, but ultimately you have to use carbon capture and 2 more examples. This is where your revision comes in. So whether it's about carbon capture or using alternative energy or things like that, or adaptation, floating houses, houses on stilts, that kind of thing, you need to have examples ready here. If you have your case study stuff, your facts and figures, and your structures bang on, you'll get a solid mark for that one. And that's hazards. Only on to living world. You're not even a third of the way through this yet. For one small-scale ecosystem you studied, name one producer and one consumer. You've only studied one small-scale ecosystem, and that will be the deciduous forest, deciduous woodland in England. So what's a producer? Something that produces its own food. So any plant, a tree, an oak tree, grass, a bush. A consumer is anything that eats the producer or another consumer. So a consumer is something that consumes, i.e., let's go for a caterpillar, shall we? If you say, for example, a scorpion, you won't get a mark for that because it's not in a small-scale ecosystem. This is not about the desert. That is a biome. Very different things. What is the role of producers in an ecosystem? Well, they produce their own food from photosynthesis, from energy from the sun. Using figure 7, calculate the temperature range in place A. So you go to place A at the top. What's the coldest temperature and what's the hottest temperature? 23.9, I believe, is the warmest. Is it 23.9? Looks like it is, yeah. 23.9. The coldest, 15.4. So the difference between them is 8.5 degrees C. Using figure 7, state 2 differences between the climate in place A and B. Well, easy. You just state 2 differences. So what's the difference in rainfall? The difference in temperature. Okay. How many marks is it? 2. So I would say that the first place has lower temperatures, clearly 3, 2, 1, 1, 0, whereas down here 16, 20, 21, and 12. So place A is colder. You could give evidence, for example, 3 degrees, 2 degrees, 1 degrees versus 16, 20, and 21. And then, sorry, be careful. I nearly made a mistake. That's rainfall. So that brings me on to my main thing, and see how easy that was to do. Just rushing through it a little bit. The top line is rainfall. So place A is not colder, it's drier. There's less rain. Place B has more rain, i.e. it has 28 millimeters in August. Okay. Temperature is the second one. So the second difference between temperature, place B, minus 14, minus 14.5, minus 13, for example, is colder than place A. Okay, other way around. So you could give evidence for that in numbers and stuff. Easy to do. Which global ecosystem matches the following description? An area with trees which drop their leaves in winter. So who drops their leaves? Well, tropical rainforest doesn't. They like it all year round. Tundra doesn't because it hasn't got that much to begin with. So it's either B or C. I mean, the one you studied is deciduous forest, and in your playground, in your yard, in your concrete area outside your school, is there trees that lose their leaf? Yes, there is. It's C, deciduous forest. You get 2 figures here, figure 8, figure 9, you're back onto a 6 marker. Suggest how different strategies are used to reduce environmental damage in either a cold environment or desert. Now, you only studied one of these, therefore you have to do the hot desert. Use figure 8 or 9 and your own understanding. So up here, figure 8 is about the desertification, figure 9 is about cold environments. Therefore, as you're writing about the desert, you're only going to use figure 8, the Great Green Wall. Again, once you remember this, it's very simple. Your first point should be about the figure. So, reducing environmental damage, i.e. the Great Green Wall, reducing desertification. And you can mention about that. And then your second point, obviously 6 markers break them up into 2, 3 markers. Your second point can be another strategy that helps reduce environmental damage, whether this might be irrigation, for example, from your Thar Desert case study, and the Indira Gandhi Canal, and how that adds water to the ground and makes the area more fertile and reduces the risk of desertification. That's fine. It's only figure 10, a newspaper article using figure 10 gave one feature of the pattern of wildfires. So what is there a pattern there? Most of them happen towards the centre or the north of the country. You could say maybe that they are mostly concentrated through the centre of the country, just north of Brasilia. Tells you that there. I think that's probably enough. I wouldn't say there's a clear pattern apart from that. Just towards the north and centre. Outline one reason why wildfires are a threat to global climate. Well, this one, why they're a threat to global climate? Well, you're burning trees down. So trees burn, therefore CO2 is released from these trees, but also they can't take in any more CO2, so there's more CO2 in the atmosphere, i.e. global warming, greenhouse effect, that kind of thing. Figure 11, 9 marker number 2. And there's no spag here, note that. Some economic activities, tropical rainforests have major environmental impacts. Do you agree? Again, the same question. Lovely. Do you agree? Yes and no. 2 paragraphs on one side, 1 on the other. Doesn't matter which one you do. Use figure 11 and a case study to explain your answer. Well, obviously, a case study is the Amazon, but you have to use the figure first just to make sure it's done. It's the way I always teach it. Use the figure, then your own understanding afterwards. Obviously, interweave your understanding throughout. Using figure 11 and a case study. So using figure 11, any of these. Ecotourism. Palm oil plantation in Indonesia. A hydroelectric dam in Brazil. It's up to you. I would personally start with this one. Palm oil plantation in Indonesia can have major environmental impacts because obviously this is from deforestation, and that causes bad environmental impacts because animals lose their homes, but also more CO2 in the atmosphere. And then you can start to mention these 2 bottom ones here, the hydroelectric dam and ecotourism, because this is in the Amazon, your case study, you've learned about this, and you can say how it's benefit for the environment. But over here, the dam in Brazil, again, you've learned about it, how it's a negative for the environment. You can mention the economy, but don't really get too involved with that, because the question asks about the environment. Okay? I can on charge. So there's 9 markers there. Again, 3 paragraphs intro, and make sure you use your case studies. And then you're on to section C. The charging. Ooh. Then you're on to section C. Just made that in time. So coastal landscapes. Oh, hang on a minute. You missed a bit. Physical landscapes in the UK answer 2 questions. Question 3 is about coasts. Question 4 about rivers. Question 5 about glacial. Now, whatever school you went to, you learn only about 2 of these, not 3. Okay? I know, for example, the students watching this in the most part, the school I worked at last, my favourite school, did questions 3 and 4. Therefore, you leave 5 blank. If you answer 5, you are a lemon. Question 3 and question 4 only. So 3, use figure 12. Figure 12 is down here, by the way. You got that here. Match the following descriptions of coastal landscapes in the UK with the correct letters shown. An uneven coastline with several large islands offshore. Where several large islands, uneven coastline, you might go up here. It's towards the Orkney Islands. A headland which marks the coastal limit of the South Downs. So you'd find the South Downs. Oh, coastal limit down here. Looks like C to me. So C's up here, and probably E for the first one. So E and C. Study figure 13, an image showing the coastal realignment scheme at Medmary, West Sussex. Using figure 13, state what happened to the area behind the shingle beach. To behind here, what happened? It was flooded. Done. Turned into a lagoon. State one advantage of the coastal management strategy shown in figure 13. What is the coastal management strategy at figure 13? Let's have a little look. Where is the coastal management strategy? Well, coastal realignment, clearly. So I would say here, what's one advantage of making this area deliberately flooded? You could say potentially it protects these houses down here and this land's down here, but also allows for less environmental impact. You see figure 14, what is the projected rate of erosion for 2030? So over here, 2030, this is where a ruler would come out, okay? Do a line up here. I would say roughly up to about, 3.3 meters per year. Going by, that's just a line of best fit. Explain the benefits of using hard engineering strategies to protect the coastline. Just the benefits, not the negatives, not consequences. 2 benefits, 4 marks, 2 benefits. So you give 1 benefit and explain why it's a good thing. Another benefit, explain why it's a good thing. 1 benefit is that it works, is efficient, and lasts a long time. Therefore, this is a benefit because you haven't got to keep rebuilding it at huge cost. Another benefit is that, this set the coastline. So you could say, for example, sea walls have a benefit because they benefit the land economically. Explain what that means. Or restaurants, houses, and tourism can continue to thrive behind the coastline without risk of being flooded and spending money on insurance. Study figure 15, a photograph of part of Dorset showing maps on the bottom. Okay, explain the formation of physical features shown in the coastline. So, 6 marks. What are the features? Well, certainly this one down here is a wave cut platform. So for 3 marks, obviously it's 3, I split this into 3 and 3. You tell me in 3 sentences how a wave cut platform is formed. For example, you mentioned the word erosion, you mentioned the word deposition, you mentioned the word waves, and you mentioned about how that wave cut platform is happening over time using this figure down here. And in terms of the feature up here, you could use the headland or the bay. It'd be really cheeky just to make sure you get an extra bit of detail. You could mention both. So you could say about the headland being hard rock and eroding slower, whereas this rock down here, soft rock, is eroding faster. Therefore, you get the formation of bays and headlands. Lovely. 6 marks. Doddle. Question 4. We're doing this one. Yes, we are. Match the following descriptions of the rivers in the UK with the correct letters shown on figure 16. What you'll notice is, by the way, is that they kind of match a little bit. So you'll see similar trends and similar patterns in these. And you see the same for question 5, really, but obviously you're not doing that. A river which flows from West Pennines to Liverpool Bay. This comes back to geography. West Pennines, Liverpool Bay. Liverpool Bay down here, West Pennines. Okay, so Pennines West down here. I would say that one is probably C. Liverpool Bay is down here, isn't it? So how can you go wrong with that? And a river which flows northeast through the Fens and into the Wash. Fens, wash, Fens, wash, Fens, wash, Fens, wash, Fens, wash, D. Lovely. Using figure 17, describe the relief, so the height and the shape of that. It even gives you the definition. On the side of the straightened river, it is flat. Done. You can see from here it's not very hilly. Height and shape of the land, it is flat. You can even say, river level. Suggest how the strategy shown in figure 17 helps manage the river. Oh, what strategy is being used here? Oh, it's been straightened. River straightening, channel straightening. How this helps? It means water vacates the area faster, therefore reducing the risk of flooding. Done. Figure 18, again, look, another graph question. Calculate the range of maximum discharge. The highest is 22. The lowest is, it looks like down here, 7. 22 minus 7, 15. 4 marker, explain how river levees are formed. Now, I don't break this into 2 and 2. Actually, what I do here is if I was marking this, I'd probably give a mark per sentence. So 4 marks, 4 stages, how are levees formed? Well, first of all, you can say the river floods. You have to mention that. 1 mark. The river floods and the water level rises up. It exceeds capacity, i.e. floods. Number 2, sediment is carried up and transported to the top and deposited when the river loses energy. 2 marks. This is deposited on the banks of the river, and when the water evaporates, sediment is left behind. Deposited, forming the levee. 3 marks. The last little mark I would say is that this happens over and over again and gradually builds the levees up. 4 marks. 6 marker. Explain how physical and human factors may affect flood risk. Figure 19, understanding. I think you're going to get bored of me saying this now. the first sentence should be figure 19. So physical and human risks, clearly this looks to me like urbanization. So human factors, the fact that it's homes and businesses that are built on the river plains. So I would say that. In figure 19, clearly it's urbanization causing the flood. Many homes and businesses are built on the floodplains. That's stolen from here, look. Therefore, the water can't go into the impermeable surface. That's where your revision comes in. And therefore, you get flooding. That's 3 marks. Another example is physical factors. So you mentioned human, you must mention physical too. The word "and" there is really, really important. And that's where you bring in your own flooding, i.e. Somerset. For example, Somerset experienced record-setting rains in January 2014. Therefore, this led to flood risk being increased because there was so much water, the saturated ground couldn't absorb it all. Done. Question 5. Do we do this one? No. Blank, blank, blankety blank, 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 blank. Just check. End of the paper. Done. And then you go through and check your answers. Then you go through and add to this 6 marker. Anything else I can add about Somerset? Is this double right? Maybe with a pen and a ruler and a calculator. I've got this right. Just double check this one here. You go through. I would go through to 9 markers first. Oh, no, is there anything else I can add for my case study? Anything about the Amazon? Have I spelt the words correctly in the SPAG question? And that's it. And that's your paper. You go through and check. You go through and write all the answers. You go through and add some stuff. If you want to do the little asterisk thing and add it at the end, lovely. Go through and check your multiple choice questions. Anything to pick up a mark. So I bet you if you check over a whole paper in 5 minutes, you'll find one thing you can add to improve a score, and therefore you get an extra mark probably, and therefore you might get an extra grade. I'll do this again with paper 2s and paper 3s and stuff, going over time. Give me a thumbs up, like, obviously share and subscribe if you want to share to other people in the classes and stuff. This hopefully is useful for you in terms of preparation. Please go and have a go at this paper. If you want to see more of these, please tell me in the comments. I always like to hear from you guys. And yeah, if you want to see more of these, let me know. If it was useful to you, tell me. If it wasn't, also do tell me. Until next time, guys, take care of yourselves, all right? You're doing really well. So proud of you. See you soon.